Hey everyone, welcome. It's Baron, and with a new Path of Exile 1 League right around the corner, I wanted to do a roundup of content that you may find useful. Rather than link to a bunch of my own videos, though, or even to curate specific League starter builds from other creators, I thought I would take a different approach and go broader, tell you all about some of the YouTube channels and content creators themselves that I find to be helpful and effective communicators. This won't necessarily focus on individuals who also have dedicated streaming hours, though many of them do. For each creator or channel, I'll give a brief overview of the type of content they specialize in, a description of what I like about their channel, and link to a video that I feel exemplifies the type of stuff they put out. Needless to say, these are just my opinions, and someone not being on this list is in no way a negative commentary on their character or content or intelligence or any of the rest of it. But I wanted to give an idea of who I personally look to for analysis about different aspects of the game, not to mention give a well-deserved shout-out to people who have more than earned it. I think you'll agree. This is also where I do need to tell you that I'm not going to be tolerating any rude or inflammatory comments about specific creators down in the comments. Feel free to voice your concerns or hesitations in the comments if you have them, but as always, I'm going to ask you to remember that these are real people with real emotions on the other end of these cameras, and ask you not to talk about anyone in a way that you wouldn't do if you were sitting down in the same room with them having a chat. There are respectful ways to voice disagreement, and that's really the only type of discourse that I'm interested in, the respectful kind. With that out of the way, let's talk about my process, then dive in. When I started thinking about who I would include on such a list, I realized that several of the names that came to mind would be almost useless to recommend to the majority of you because they are popular content creators who you likely already know about. On the other hand, I didn't want to leave them off the list because they are, in fact, important members of the community who deserve recognition, and of course on the off chance that a newer player is watching, or maybe somebody who hasn't explored the deep depths of POE YouTube, maybe you haven't heard of them, so I definitely didn't want to leave these folks out. And that's when I had the idea of splitting the list into several parts. At first, I tried to just split the list in two, based on, between well-known people channels on the one hand and lesser-known channels on the other hand. But I quickly realized as I was looking around that there was just too much variance in the relative exposure, and recognition of different channels for only two categories to work. So I did make a third category in the middle. I am therefore going to list 5 channels in each of 3 categories, 5 which are well-known in the community, 5 which are reasonably well known, kind of in the middle, without being huge, and then 5 who I believe are likely undersubscribed relative to the quality of their material. Call them hidden gems. So a total of 15 channels which will cover a wide range of recognizability and reach, from the very niche to the very popular. Most of these creators do content for both POE 1 and 2, but this video, because of the upcoming POE 1 League, I'll be specifically addressing their POE 1 content patterns. So the obvious question is where to draw the lines between the 3 categories. How do you define hidden gem, fairly well known, and very well known? And grudgingly, I think that means that I have to break it down by subscriber count. I at least need to start there. I don't love subscriber count as a measure. It feels kind of crass and grind-setty, if you're familiar with that phrase, to care too much about that subscription number or compare people based on it like it's some kind of competition. But as much as I try not to focus too much on subscriber numbers for myself or as a measure of like personal worth or whatever, I'm also a guy who really appreciates a good, concrete, objective measure. And in this specific context, if we're going to be talking in any meaningful sense about the relative reach and recognizability of a channel, I feel like you'd be crazy to not at least start with subscriber count, just as a rough starting point. So in the interest of just to try and inform you all about the creators who are known more or less widely, I will swallow my vague discomfort and press on, just briefly mentioning their numbers. So all in all, I looked around at the relative scale of subscriber counts across POE YouTube, and I chose to draw the semi-arbitrary lines of 0 to 5,000 subscribers as a, quote, hidden gem, 5,000 to 25,000 subscribers as relatively well-known, and then anything north of 25,000 will be considered quite well-known in the community. Again, these don't bear any relationship to how much I like the channel. It's not like a tier list or anything like that. I'm just including it for informational purposes so that you, the viewer, can understand how likely it would be that the average YouTube viewer for POE would have heard of these individuals, if you haven't. So let's dive in first with some folks that you very likely would have heard of, those with a greater than 25,000 subscriber count, and in many cases, several times that number. These are some popular individuals, and in my opinion, it is with good reason. I think that the general quality and production value of their content is high. It's commensurate with the number of subscribers they have, and they seem to be, on the whole, generally pretty good, reasonable people. And so let's just do this one first, because you knew it was coming if you know my channel, and I don't want to keep you waiting. Number one is Jorgen. Jorgen's a buddy of mine. I think that's probably pretty well known. We do a podcast together, Coffee and Chaos. You feel free to check it out. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if a sizable number of people who are subscribed to my channel originally probably found me through him. But, you know, I think he's a fun dude to talk to about the game with. We have very similar thought processes on theory crafting, on the importance of tanky builds, and I was subscribed to his channel for quite a long time before we got better acquainted. I think he's got some excellent content. Well known as the Delve Specialist, you may actually be surprised by the breadth of content on his channel if you are not yet one of the approximately 39,000 subscribers that he has. Maybe if you're only passingly familiar with him, you might only think of him as the Delve guy, so to speak. But his videos range from community build showcases to his own build experimentation, reviews of ongoing Path of Exile news, and general purpose guides to things like the Atlas passive tree and Path of Building. He tells us that he'll also be soon dipping into some lore-related content, which I'm looking forward to. The sample video that I'm going to link you to from Jorgen is his Delve guide from last League. A lot of production value clearly went into this video, and it's a good example of the type of content that you will see on his channel. Number two. Next up is Sirgog, who I'm sure many of you have heard of. Now, if I'm a guy who likes good, concrete, objective numbers, then Sirgog is a guy who loves them, and I respect the hell out of him for it. Apparently, I am not the only one who feels that way, because he's sitting at around 55,000 subscribers. Pretty popular, deservedly so. One of my favorite things about Sirgog is that he does not succumb to the common creator temptations of engaging in hyperbole or presenting their subjective opinion as an objective fact. That's not to say that Sirgog doesn't present his opinions. He's always just very careful to delineate where those separate from what can be demonstrated to be objectively or numerically true or anything like that. The primary types of content that you're going to find on his channel are up-to-date reviews of the most current news and changes, and analyses of what you might call the meta aspects of the game. This can be things like reviews of which builds are the most popular, or what the in-game economy is currently doing and why, breakdowns of the odds of finding various divination cards or unique items, and occasionally broad purpose guides to things like currency making or Atlas progression. This is just an aside, my guess here. To me, it couldn't be clearer that Sirgog has some kind of professional training in some kind of statistical or mathematical analysis. I don't know exactly what, but I love it, and he applies it with careful rigor. He's always good about calling out when he ventures from fact into speculation, and he never goes too far out on the speculation limb even then. Overall, well-informed, level-headed creator who I can strongly recommend. I will be linking you to his overview of the build meta back in early patch 3.26 several months ago now. That information is now more of a historical time capsule for what was going on at that point, but it should give you a good idea of the sort of analysis that he's about, and you will certainly find a new video like that on his channel soon when that same information becomes available for the new upcoming League 3.27. On to number 3, Lolcohol. Lolcohol is a popular, laid-back content creator with a funny, self-deprecating, kind of dry sense of humor that I like, and he's got a steady demeanor about him. His subscriber count is currently around 62,000, so very well known. Of the creators I'm featuring here in this very well-known list, I would say his particular strength is probably being one of the ones who focuses the most on releasing practical guide content, and lots of it. His most common topics are in some semblance of descending order. At the top, what I might call mid to high level crafting projects with the occasional foray into like very expensive crafting, followed then by currency farming strategies, gambling exhibitions, general purpose beginner advice, and the same type of covering of game updates that many creators do. One of the things that I've seen him do several times in his videos, which I like, is his willingness to take an extra step in his crafting process, like a risky step that he might not otherwise have taken, just to show the audience what will happen if you take this step and fail, and then how you go back to the drawing board and how expensive that mistake is. He will frequently come right out when he's doing this and he'll say out loud, look, yeah, normally I'm pretty risk averse, he would say, and if I was doing this craft privately, I would just stop here, it's good enough, but let's take another risk now and see what happens for the memes, and just for educational purposes. The sample video that I'm going to link to you is one where he crafts a very specific wand and walks through the steps of how he does it and how each step helps him get there. Number 4. Next up is Dreamcore, a rising channel with currently north of 37,000 subscribers. Here we take an interesting shift in channel type from Lolcohol's content, which is always very hands-on and focuses on his own journey and what you could do to kind of replicate it, over here to Dreamcore's specialty, which is usually focused on like high-level technical overviews of detailed game mechanics. He'll often be discussing some of the hypothetical implications of these game mechanics, like what you could actually do with some of them. And I think that both of these types of content are incredibly important to have in the community. So like, I'm not comparing the quality of this, I'm not in any way saying that one channel is better than the other, I just look at them for different things. In Dreamcore's case, he will frequently make a video about like a whole concept in the game, or about the many ramifications of a new item. Don't get me wrong, he's definitely known to release build guides and content updates, other more traditional content as well, like many other creators. But I would say the focus of his channel is much closer to someone like Sirgog's, kind of a broad brush that looks at the whole gestalt of the game, but in this case perhaps with a slight bent more towards game mechanics and interactions as opposed to like metagame. But honestly, the two channels, Sirgog and Dreamcore, are pretty similar in a lot of ways, I would say. Just in the technical, respectful analysis. And I like that Dreamcore's videos are always tightly scripted with good production value. They're kind of structured like essays, but just spoken aloud for clarity. There's a sort of order to them that makes it very coherent and digestible, and he always gets right to the point. The sample video that I'm going to link to you for Dreamcore is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. It is from last league, and he breaks down one specific potential modifier on the jewel Bound by Destiny and talks through all the potential interactions and ramifications of it. This should give you an idea of the type of thing that I'm talking about. And now, on to number 5. I actually had a really hard time picking a 5th slot for this category because getting to this point and only having one slot left, it made me realize just how many people I was going to have to leave off the list who I wish I didn't have to leave off. It's just that the video can't go on for hours. I can't list 200 channels. I have to cut it somewhere. But honestly, if you think about it, this is a great problem for the community to have. It makes me proud of this community, the fact that there are so many high-profile content creators who put out quality, helpful material with a minimum of clickbait. The fact that I have such a hard time picking amongst them is, I would say, a wonderful thing for the community and the game. And so, even the folks that I'm not able to list here, regrettably, they still have my real appreciation, and I want to give an honorable mention shout out to folks including, but not limited to, folks like POE Guy, Zizarin, Palstron, Pox, Spicy Sushi, Ron Array, Captain Lance, Big Ducks, Jung Rowan, Gazzy, K Gaming. There's just so many. But ultimately, for my personal pick for number 5 here, I've got to give it to AsmodeusClips. He may not always hold your hand, but nor is he going to present something as being easy or beginner friendly when it's not. He's not going to bait you. He is a smart, consistent, incredibly experienced, detail-oriented guy who knows what he's talking about. I have personally learned plenty from him, and I know others have as well. His content, from what I've seen, tends to focus on sort of practical guides to effective league starts, and then crafting, trading, and builds, with a lean more towards sort of high-end stuff compared to some other channels for people who want to push past their beginner phase and really dive into the deepest content PoE has to offer. For a good sample of the type of high-quality video he puts out, check out this from last league, a video where he covers and describes 15 different farming strategies. Obviously, these will change as the game gets patched over time, but you can see in the rapid-fire details he includes for each one that he understands the game deeply and can convey that information efficiently. So, that's 5 of the very well-known. Now let's move on to the channels who undoubtedly many of you will have heard of, but some of you won't have, the ones between 5,000 and 25,000 subscribers. If you are, like me, pretty terminally online in the POE space, you will probably have heard of all of these, but if you're a relatively casual viewer, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these are new to you. Number 1. BawLoch, who insists that I pronounce his name that way. It's up to you, man. BawLoch, again, like Jorgen, probably not a surprise if you have seen my videos before. I feature BawLoch's content pretty regularly on my channel, and honestly, he's almost borderline on whether I would want to include him on the undersubscribed hidden gems list instead, because even though he technically falls above the cutoff of 5,000 subscribers that lands him in this relatively well-known category, that number seems wildly disproportionate to the quality of his content, in my opinion. Like, that's so low compared to how good his stuff is. It's actually kind of crazy to me that he only has that many subscribers. His videos are well-paced, well-researched, well-spoken. I think he's going places. I run his strategies all the time, and even when I find that an individual strategy he covers isn't for me, like the Alva Evolution strat, for example, that always comes down to just personal preference. Like, I just don't like that kind of playstyle. It's not like he did anything wrong. He researches and tests his material, then explains it clearly and concisely. For a sample of the type of thing that you'll find on his channel, I'm going to link you to his take on the Blight Heart farming strategy from last league. This one, I think, is a bit of an anachronism. I'm pretty sure that it has been nerfed out of existence by patch notes, but even if that's the case, it should give you a good idea of the type of thing that he gets up to, in which I'm sure you can expect more of this league. Bringing us to number 2, Zen M, with over 16,000 subscribers. I think the thing that I appreciate the most about Zen M is that he is one of those players in the super upper echelon who has no problem making a mirror or a mage blood or whatever he wants in like the first week of a league, and yet, despite that, you never feel like he's talking down to you, or at least I don't. He explains his strategies and accomplishments without any hint of bragging or ego. He's just explaining it to provide information to the community. In the past, he's covered things like a league start simulacrum farm with a dedicated toxic rain build intended to level gems fast and efficiently to sell for massive profit. He's also covered profit methods as varied as heist, bestiary, sanctum, invitations, profit crafting, and plenty more. He has done dedicated build guide content, broad guides to specific mechanics, and progress diaries so that you can follow along with how he's making all that money so quickly. Overall, he is a refreshingly calm, even-keeled guy, and even when he describes being frustrated by something, he does so in an incredibly chill way that doesn't, like, levy needless accusations at the developers. He's just describing his experience for you. I respect that, and I would love to see more of that in the community. For the sample video from Zen's channel, I'm going to link you to a large heist blueprint experiment video that he put out a few leagues back. It won't be strictly applicable anymore, but it, again, as usual, will give you kind of a good idea. Now, I will say that in recent months, his content has skewed a bit more towards Path of Exile 2, and he told me the same himself, but he always releases at least a few videos for every Path of Exile 1 league. I did chat with him to confirm he'll be doing so again this league, and his insights are always welcome. I encourage you to give him a look. Number 3, Cyclon. I did a double and even triple take when I saw that Cyclon's subscriber count was under 10,000. He's at around 7,500. For some reason, I thought he was much better known than that, and I think he really ought to be. Now, if you do know him, you're probably starting to notice a pattern in the type of content creators I find it enjoyable to watch. But Cyclon is yet another of these very informative, yet even-keeled guys. He's not over the top. He just presents his information calmly and clearly, and he's always interested in hearing from his viewers about what helps them best understand what he's trying to convey. I love that he requests the feedback like that. In terms of the type of content that he puts out, I would say that he specializes in instructional content about how to have a fast, efficient league start, including a focus on best campaign practices to set you up for early success. He certainly does content throughout the league, though, and in my head, this may be just my personal interpretation, but I think of him as very much like a bow build enjoyer, like a Legion enjoyer at heart. So like if you were around when Grimro was actively making content, I would say that while their presentation styles are very different, the content they focused on, like the in-game content, tended to be pretty similar. With that said, he does participate in plenty of other content too, not just bow builds or legion farms. In recent weeks, for example, he's put an incredible amount of work into a written and multi-video guide for maximizing efficiency at League Start. Now, that isn't necessarily a guide for somebody who's new to the game and has completed the campaign, say, 5 or fewer times, though feel free to check it out if you're curious. But if you're the type of player who's done the campaign 10 times, 20 times, 50 times or more, and are still looking for ways to improve your efficiency, he's got a gold mine of information here, some of which you may already know, and some of which you may not, but having it all in one place is both impressive and useful. So I'm going to link to that written guide in addition to linking a sample video from his channel. That sample video is going to be a harvest farming video from last league, but hopefully you'll check out some of his League Start content too. He's putting a lot of effort into it. Number 4. Fuzzy Duckzy. With 23,500 subscribers, he's another one. He's just sneaking in under the wire for this category. I admittedly shifted the cutoff for the category upwards a little bit so that I could include him because I think he deserves it. Duckzy tends to focus on straightforward, beginner-friendly content and builds, and what I might call non-sweaty farming methods. In other words, farms that focus more on relaxing and picking fun content instead of pushing the limits and trying to squeeze out every last divine per minute. As they say, the best divines per hour strategy is the one that keeps you playing, because you're not making anything if you get burned out and turn the game off. He will sometimes show off what happens when he pumps all that currency he makes into a build, shows off something expensive, but his general focus is going to be much more on builds that can function on a lower budget. For my sample video of his that I'm going to link you to, it's going to be his Frost Blades League Start build guide for this league, so give it a shot if you're not settled on a League Starter. And then number 5, Anime Princess, who, despite the name, is, as far as I can tell, neither an anime character nor a princess. But I digress, and what he is a smart build creator who achieved much of his recognition and popularity with a Spark Inquisitor build, and all the hard work that he put into making a comprehensive guide for it. He also sneaks in under the categories wire, there's a couple of these, with a current subscriber count of around 24,000. Yet another straightforward, comprehensive, level-headed creator. He always explains things clearly and meets his audience where they are at, not falling into the trap that I myself think I'm plenty guilty of, forgetting sometimes that not all audience members will have watched all of my previous videos. He is always good about revisiting and giving you the basics when he comes back to a topic or when he publishes a new video on a topic. He doesn't assume that you've seen the entire library of his content. But although Spark Inquisitor may be how he made his name, it's far from the only thing that he does well. He's made other builds, including Viper Strike and Poisonous Concoction, and the sheer breadth of different Spark builds he's done kind of warrant thinking of them as very different things. Poison, Widow Hail, Chaos Inoculation, Trickster. I think maybe I saw an Archmage version from him, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically he's played with a ton of different interactions and variations with Spark, and so he understands its intricacies as a skill. For the sample video of his that I'm going to link, of course, I'll be showing you one of his many effective videos on the Spark build. And now, on to the category that I would call hidden gems. Diamonds in the rough. Those channels with under 5,000 subscribers. They may not always have some of the polish that higher view count channels have, but hey, neither do I, so who the hell am I to talk, right? I say give them a look and see if you like them. I can tell you that I have looked at least 5 videos from each of these channels that have taught me something and that I have enjoyed. So that's gotta say something. What really matters to me is that every one of these guys have, at minimum, the solid core of good content and game knowledge, so the potential is there and I enjoy their videos. And as usual, for channels like that I like, they all seem like pretty chill guys. So let's finish the video by talking about some folks who, if it were up to me, would be a little bit better known in the community. Number 1, IcyBaron. No, I'm not just including him because of the Baron thing, but sure, it helps. Of course it helps. Look, IcyBaron has a channel that looks pretty similar, albeit on a lesser known scale, to creators like Lolcohol or Fuzzy Duckzy. Basically a mix of build guides, build diaries, and farming strategies, occasionally interspersed with things like gamble videos just for fun. The sample video that I'll link you to is for his implementation of the Cast on Crit Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice build and his progress with it. Now, to see one of the things that I like so much about him, take a look at the written guide accompaniment to the video. He includes it in the POB notes section. It is incredibly detailed, informative, and well formatted. It could not be clearer that he puts a ton of thought and effort into what he does. In fact, I like it so much that I would like to try it out this league using his guide. It's not advertised as a league starter, which makes sense to me, so I would probably pivot to it from another build, but I love how in-depth he goes. Check it out. IcyBaron. Number 2 is blUt. Now, blUt is an interesting case because while he does release some build guide type content, and I'll touch more on that in a moment, much of his channel is focused on the basics of profit crafting. It's sort of his little niche. The closest comparison that I can think of for the style of his channel is like if Zen M focused more on crafting. They've got relatively similar like voice presentation styles, a similar pattern of going really hard in that first week or two of a league and making fast mirrors, but also that similar casual attitude towards it. Like Zen, he's not talking down to or insulting people who don't do what he does, and he's not even really bragging. Like, he's just saying, hey, look, here's what I do and how I do it if you're curious. So I like that attitude. What's interesting is that he doesn't always make material on super top-end mirror crafting for hyper-specific items the way some creators do. He focuses on bulk creation and sales of items that are needed by many players in slight variations, things like generically good rings or Stygian Vice belts. He does sometimes branch into crafts that are aimed at specific builds if it's popular enough. Like historically in the past, he's done video on the multi-link spark gloves, Omni rings, and spectral shield throw jewels. But overall, his channel is great for understanding basic low-level crafting methods and how bulk creation of simple items can be profitable. Now, I have to imagine that with the new asynchronous trade coming this league, it'll make it outrageously easy to sell stuff without interrupting what you're doing. You can just keep crafting, or you can go back to mapping, or you could turn the whole game off and sell all that stuff that you just crafted. What that means is that might make it a fairly popular choice to try and profit craft. In turn, if that's true, it could drive competition up, and price some things out of the market. You may not be able to sell them. So you may need to take some general knowledge from blUt and then try to apply that to some niche items that you can think of. Like I said, I think it might be easy for good enough gear to proliferate pretty widely with the advent of asynchronous trade, and again, those like pretty good items might get priced out of the market. Like you might not be able to sell it for anything. Now, one of the interesting non-crafting things that blUt has on his channel is his consistent use of a cheap cold damage over time, or DOT, occultist for his league starter every league. blUt will be the first to tell you that the build is not super high on damage, requires a multi-button playstyle, and while tanky, it's not the tankiest build out there either. So why play it so often? Well, it does a few things exceedingly well. Profane Bloom gives it great clear, it can be assembled quickly on a shoestring budget, and it's familiar. I myself ran a very similar build back in 3.15, I think it was, when Shack Central was actively maintaining his guide to Cold Dot Occultist. Actually, this build is in my final top 2 for what I'm choosing between for League Start, but regardless of whether I run it, I know that blUt will be running it, so give his channel a look if you are interested. Number 3. Now, Vertolka is probably the newest and smallest channel that I'm featuring on my list. He hasn't been making content long, but I like his style. He first came to my attention during Settlers League, when we were all doing experiments with dust and crop shipments. That appears to be the first time that he produced any videos for YouTube. He had some interesting data to talk about, and then since then, he started branching out into other types of content. I'm going to link you to a recent video of his where he discusses the methods and importance of modifying your loot filter, something you may think of as a niche topic, but I thoroughly enjoyed the video, and I'm glad people are talking about it. This is an important element of the game, and he describes it well. Number 4, Llyd. Llyd typically has good polish on his videos. He speaks quickly but explains himself pretty well, and he is rigorous in how he does his profitability tests, which is one of the main features of his channel. Every league he runs a variety of tests on different methods of making currency, running experiments across dozens or hundreds of maps for each method. and then he records his results. He also does content on game news and builds, though he seems to do dedicated build content more often for POE 2 than POE 1. Still, he's showed off POE 1 builds before, including a Penance Brand Inquisitor and a wide variety of Scion builds. He's used the Scion class for a lot of things, including a Volcanic Fissure of Snaking build, Righteous Fire, Blade Vortex, Tornado Shot, and Power Siphon, among other things. Now, since the focus of his PoE content tends to be more skewing towards farming experiments and data, for his video I will link you to one such experiment, one that he did on an Essence plus Betrayal strategy. Check it out. And then number 5, to round out the list, 0 Point Flux. I actually first heard of Zero when he reached out to me to be on his new Path of Exile podcast, where he interviews content creators and talks to them about their build creation process. I really enjoyed our chat, but look for that episode at your own risk. It turned out that I was not using the high quality mic that you're hearing right now, but instead the very crappy pinhole mic on my webcam, and we didn't even discover the issue until after the recording was over. So I apologize to you, the viewer. I apologize to Zero. That's on me. I sound pretty bad in that video, but please don't hold that against his channel. I encourage you to check out some of his other stuff too. He is still at a relatively low subscriber count because he only just got started, but his channel growth has been impressive in that time, and I suspect it's due to the full court press he's been doing releasing content. Some of those videos have been interviews with top name creators like Pox, Baylor Mage, and Pelstron, and then several who were even listed in this very video, like Sirgog, Dreamcore, and Jorgen. He's talked to all these guys. But interviews are not all he does. I will link you to his recent video on his upcoming League starter. A man after my own heart, he will be going with an Ignite Elementalist, though he will League start Wave of Conviction, a classic skill for that archetype, which I definitely endorse. On top of those, he also has videos on crafting, game news, and non-League starter builds, other types of builds. Like everyone else on this list, he carefully and clearly explains his logic and decision-making process, so I can definitely recommend giving him a look. And that's it. You've heard about 15 YouTube channels/creators who I find to be helpful, engaging, and easy to watch and listen to. I hope you will take a pass through some of their content if you haven't before, and see if they might earn your subscription. Let me know who else should have been included down in the comments. Best of luck to all of you on your League start. Thank you for tuning in, and take it easy.